Welcome to the Fireside Chat, the Lure of Nature, for this Relearn episode. I'm joined today by Sol, space architect at Learnlife and founder of ArchiKids, who has been working on space design and learning architecture for the over 15 years. And I'm also joined by Guille Villena, our learning guide at Learnlife. And we're going to be thinking about and talking about how to use the lure of nature and the great outdoors. So first off, as you can see, we're all sitting outside here in nature. In times of a pandemic and given the current COVID situation, it feels like this is the best and safest possible place to be right now. So it would just be good to get your thoughts as we start on what are some of the benefits and why is it that we are looking more and more to the outdoors as a source of learning.
I think that 2020 hasn't been a traditional year for all of us. We have been into a lockdown and isolation, and that somehow make us aware of the importance of the space. We realize that space matters and how the space can affect into a physical and emotional way. And that means that being outdoor, it has become a really must-to-do list, a priority. And some important issue to think is that while we are outdoor and we are moving, we are activating our brains. So it's an example of how important should be to start thinking of outdoor learning environment instead of indoor spaces. Can you?
No, and I totally agree with you, Sol. And I think that COVID also from a learning perspective has forced education to reinvent itself. Now we're more focused on blended learning, on personal learning, and as you were saying, on well-being. And I think that it has also taught us that we can use any space for learning. So, for example, Finland or Barcelona now are encouraging schools to use the city as a classroom. And also the confinement reminded us that anything can be a learning space, like your kitchen, your room, any room in your house. And one of the questions that we've thought is, why hadn't we done this before? No, if why should we lock learning in a classroom if life happens outside, and then we can learn from any space. So those are the thoughts that we have had for the last months.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. And seeing how you're sitting today is a great example of that, right? Why do we need to confine learning to indoor spaces? Can you tell us a bit more about this, the way that the space is used, the furniture, the thinking behind all of that, and Learnlife and how we can be creative around enabling learning to happen anywhere?
Yeah, of course. So as we said before, that we have realized that space matter, outdoor space also matters. So how can we create an active learning environment? And one example is this furniture that is a flexible furniture, and we can use it indoor, outdoor. We can take it. I can just make it like an example for all of you. And how can we work together with the learning guys and me as a designer to create a setup of different learning opportunities outdoor. So Guille, maybe you can add how this is linked to the pedagogical.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a very, very good point, which is that from a space perspective and from a learning perspective, there has to be a communication. No? And we're very lucky to have Sol as the architect, as someone who's leading the thought around the usage of spaces. And it has been extremely useful for us to have her insights on how can we use spaces for learning. So from a learning perspective, we've also had the learners involved in this process on how they want to use the spaces, how they best learn, what are some things that really work for them, what are some things that don't work for them. For example, we've realized that they need to have a clear distinction in an outdoor space. What is a space that they can use for play and what is a space they can use for learning? No? Because sometimes they don't remember that if they're outside, that can also be a learning space. They're used to, traditionally, they're used to using an outdoor space only as playtime. And we also want to shift that mindset and have the outdoor space also as a learning space. So we've been having lots of conversations and with involving the learners to be part of that process, and it has turned out very, very interesting and very, very cool to see.
I would like to add that what you said, Guille, is about co-creation together. I think for me as an architect, it's also a privilege that we can share and we can co-create together with the learning guys and also with the learners, which should be the more suitable design process to come to these needs, as you said. Before, it's like usually an architect has like all the design principles inside, and we don't share. We didn't used to share, with the external community. That doesn't make any sense. I think that today more than ever, we need to co-design together because you are the last users between the learners and the learning guys. So I think that this is something, an example of how can we grow as a community and come to a better, design production.
And one point that you just raised earlier, I think it's a really important one as well, is this distinction, right, between how we traditionally outdoor space has been used as a space for play, but helping the learners understand that this can be used as a learning environment too. I think is a really important point. Can you share any specific examples? I know there's a competency-based model. So what are some specific examples of how learning is being done outdoors around building these competencies, whether it's from numeracy or
so for example, we have started a gardening studio, which is a project that we will be doing for the following year. We've started with germination of different seeds, and we will evolve into having our own garden, no? And we will add numeracy skills, literacy skills, social capabilities, collaboration, etc. Those competencies that we're working on into this project. Another example is that we, for example, identified different types of pine trees. Since we're surrounded by pine trees, what kind of pine trees are these, and how can we identify them? Knowing that there are many kinds of pine trees in where we're based, and the learners have been able to identify by observing and by having evidence. No, so also we are introducing them into the scientific method and all of the skills that has. We're also observing, for example, bugs or insects. And even though if we didn't have this outdoor space, you can also embed different numeracy and literacy skills outdoors. For example, if you're in a city, listening or imagining, telling stories with the sounds that you hear, different types of activities that you don't need trees or nature itself, but it helps obviously. But in a city, for example, there are plenty of learning opportunities there as a space.
So as a parent and someone who's engaging a lot with the parent community, I get these questions a lot, right? So break it down for me. What is numeracy? Is that maths? What is the, are there ways of working on mathematics outdoors in nature, as an example, or within architecture and the co-design? Are there ways that we can help learners understand geometry or other things like that? So, do you have also some examples of how you use the spaces in different ways, whether it's for quieter activities, whether it is for individual work or group tasks and projects?
I think that if you give this variety and versatility of different options, this will allow the learners to choose in which one they feel more comfortable or they just want to focus. And also from the point of view of learning, and I think it helps also to kind of don't create a chaos outside, to have, like, as you said before, we usually tend to think that outdoor is only for playing. And what we are realizing now that is that we can learn everywhere. And I think we should challenge ourselves to change our mindset and realize it's a huge opportunity to use every corner as a learning experience. And maybe you can share.
Yeah, I mean, for example, for the outdoor spaces that we're using, we've created different vibes or atmospheres. For example, in the transition from the indoor space to the outdoor space, in order for them to change their mindset into, yeah, I'm going to play. It's like, well, let's have like a reading time outside. Let's calm down, and then now it creates this, or you're prepping their learning, and then they can be calmed and do the activity that we have planned for outside. Also, outdoor also provides us a very good opportunity to develop their motor skills, no, and play and run and learning by playing, socializing. That's also very very important competency that outdoor really allows you to develop. And we've also used the outdoor spaces for physical activities to develop their motor skills, also for painting or as a calm area, meditation, or reading, as I said. So there's plenty of activities that you can do in any type of spaces. And as we were saying before, it's very interesting to have the learners part of that process of co-creation, and for them, like, how do they want to use that space? Because from an adult perspective, we see that this space can be used for this type of activity, but maybe for them they don't feel it that way, or it doesn't help them for their learning. So
I think that it's an amazing opportunity to understand they have 2,000 ways of using the space. Probably we have like a chair for us is a chair, and we all know for a kid it has like 2,000 other opportunities. So I think that co-creation altogether it's a win-win. You know, it's a win for the learn from the perspective of a learning guide, from an architect, because you can really take so many things and inputs that can improve, the way we are using the space. And that's what I think. If I should say something, we shouldn't be afraid to fail. We shouldn't be afraid to try, and to try new things, and to just be open to change our mindset of the typical class indoor that we are all used to.
Super. So yeah, it's a great opportunity, as you mentioned, and every space is potentially an opportunity for learning, right? Every corner, every nook that we find outdoors. What are some kind of as a final takeaway for you? What have been some of the biggest learnings, or what is it? What is the biggest kind of takeaway for you in terms of nature?
I never thought that I would say this, but I want to say thank you to COVID on behalf of the learning team, because it has opened our eyes and has made very very evident that we need to find other spaces, and that the outdoor space is for sure a very very good space for learning too. So I think that has been very eye opening for the whole learning community worldwide.
For me, is to challenge ourselves to think that every corner in the entire planet can be used as a learning experience, and we should focus on that. And it's like an amazing opportunity for change. And, yeah. So yeah, I think that's what don't be afraid. Just try.
Yeah, so super. Thanks, Guille. Thanks, Sol. We'll be sharing a presentation that shares some images and examples of what we've been talking about today, and hopefully inspires all of us to think about how we can use outdoor spaces in a creative way for learning. So we'd love to hear any from you now on any questions you might have. Don't be afraid, as Sol said.